Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we walk through some Azure Q1 updates. Quick introductions as you'll be listening to us for the next 20 to 30 minutes. My name is Emily. I'm joined by my colleague Brendan, and we are both business intelligence and analytics consultants at Thorogood. Our contact information is on the screen, and that is intentional. Please reach out if you have any questions throughout today's webcast. Today's agenda is pretty straightforward, not too complicated. I'll quickly introduce Thorogood and then we'll move into Azure updates. We don't necessarily do these updates every quarter, but there are a lot of things happening in Azure at the moment. We've seen some big releases and we're seeing different ways to help our customers. We wanted to put this together to share a little bit about what we are seeing and what might be interesting to our clients. Who are we and what do we do? Big picture, we help our customers make sense of their data. We are an independent and specialist business intelligence and analytics company with a focus on data engineering, data science, and data visualization. Our approach is rooted in understanding business goals and using the capabilities of technology to meet these goals. So customers and business objectives are always at the forefront of our approach. We're a global company with offices and consultants in Asia, Europe, and the Americas. We offer a full range of services when it comes to data and analytics, and that includes technology strategies and roadmaps, end-to-end implementation of cloud solutions, user empowerment, and analytics services. Our customers are typically multinational blue chip organizations. I've listed a few on the screen. Most of our clients fall into one of four verticals: consumer goods, pharma and life sciences, financial services, and insurance. These industries just tend to be very data rich, but we're certainly not limited to these four verticals. We are an independent consultancy, meaning that we're not tied to one specific technology. This allows us to approach our clients and projects with a unique and unbiased perspective. We have the ability and the knowledge to pick the right technology for any given need. That being said, we do partner with some of the key players in the space, including Microsoft. So a little bit about that Microsoft partnership. We've been a gold partner in relevant specialties with Microsoft for over 15 years, and we've held seats on Microsoft's Global Business Intelligence and Advanced Analytics Partner Advisory Council for about that amount of time. This position provides us with insights into Microsoft's product and services roadmap in the space, but also a platform for feedback in terms of what we're experiencing in the market. Globally, we host a range of marketing, often educational marketing events on Microsoft's BI and analytics platforms and tools. We've also been featured on Microsoft's Power BI Partner Showcase, which is a resource available online to highlight the art of the possible. Okay, enough about us. We'll now switch over to Azure updates. Quick roadmap. We'll cover a few products today, giving special attention to Synapse Analytics, Purview, Azure ML, and a few others. And this is an updates webcast, and we will cover updates, but we also wanted to weave in some insight and perspective on how we're seeing these tools used, and offer some considerations for usage patterns, best practices, and so on. We'll start with Azure Synapse Analytics, which became generally available early December of last year. Since then, and well, even before then, we've seen a lot of momentum behind this platform. Azure Synapse Analytics provides a unified experience that brings together data ingestion, big data analytics, and data warehousing at cloud scale. So instead of patching a bunch of services together, Synapse unifies data, data tasks, and data teams. Starting with data and its storage, Synapse brings multiple storage options together, specifically relational storage with data lake storage. Given the current data landscape, we're seeing there's an ever-increasing need for the flexibility to not only have data available in a traditional data warehouse setting, but also to have access to more modern data storage mediums like a data lake that can hold a combination of structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. Data ingestion. So with and integration. So with the storage and transformation of data, there's the inherent need to ingest this data regardless of the structure. Those familiar with Azure Data Factory will find the data ingestion principles of Synapse are very closely aligned. Big data analytics. Once the data is cleansed and stored within Azure Synapse resources, it's important to understand what that data is actually telling us. Within Synapse, there's the ability to visualize and perform rapid analytics and exploratory data analysis directly on your Synapse storage resources. Synapse Analytics is comprised of this main tool set, which includes Workspace. Workspace is essentially the interface or scan over a whole bunch of tools. Within Workspace, we have Azure ML, Power BI interfaces. It's Microsoft bringing their platform into one place. We then have SQL pools, which is a multi-parallel processing SQL database, essentially a rebadging of SQL DW. And here we can write transact SQL against the data lake. Notebooks. Notebooks are Microsoft's own version of that Spark type environment where we can transform and analyze. And then lastly, we have pipelines. These come built in and they use the same data integration engine and experiences as Azure Data Factory. So essentially pipelines are Azure Data Factory. This is the typical skeleton pattern or the normal flow that we're seeing. Generally, you have these three high-level silos. We have ingestion. So you might see a tool like Data Factory within this silo. We see transformation and analytics, maybe something like a Databricks tool within this silo. And then within modeling and warehousing, we'll typically see something like Azure SQL Warehouse or some type of SQL database. SQL Analytics Workspace encompasses those three elements. It sits on top of our framework and across those silos, unifying our data platform. Some considerations when implementing or starting to think about Synapse Analytics: organization of code and pipelines. Synapse is bringing tools together like Data Factory and Azure ML and offers the chance to recycle and reuse them from potentially separate interfaces into one. So with proper management and DevOps practices, there's a cut down on redundant process, leading to cost and time savings. Another consideration, DevOps. Synapse has all of the tools for an end-to-end solution, and this is great, but it does create some issues. As a result, it's very important to instill a strong DevOps framework. Exploratory data analysis. We have the ability to query directly into the data lake or data warehouse, and this gives data scientists and analysts the ability to quickly run ad hoc analysis or queries for rapid experimentation. Access and roles. Another consideration, access and roles. It becomes increasingly important with this much data and this much integration to ensure that data is democratized appropriately so that your users within your organization understand the acceptable applications of Synapse's integrated product offering. Reporting solutions. Something that we think is quite significant from a reporting perspective is Synapse's ability to visualize results nearly immediately from your queries in Synapse. And then lastly, we have data governance. With data analytics capabilities and reporting tools integrated into one product, proper governance principles are really of the utmost importance. Okay, so moving on to some updates within Data Factory. As we just briefly discussed, Microsoft has essentially injected Data Factory into Synapse as their data integration component. So we'll cover some updates within Data Factory and pipelines. One, Purview can serve as a data set for ADF, meaning that ADF can read in Purview, and there are preview capabilities to attach ADF flows to track lineage via Purview. This will be an interesting feature to test out as we evaluate its value for data engineers. Delta Lake, the open source format pioneered by Databricks, is now a supported format, and it's seeing increased functionality in ADF as it matures, opening up more flexibility and tooling which interacts with the Delta format. Data Factory, being a tool where data connections are defined, offers a lot of power and freedom for users. So addition of Azure policy integration helps to monitor configurations for drift and ensure consistency in setup of ADF across your landscape. Embracing DevOps, Azure has added in further DevOps automation beyond existing Git integration for ADF, wherein CI/CD flows are automatically generated as part of the ADF publishing mechanism. There have also been a number of infrastructure improvements, such as more options in choosing reserved instances. And lastly, previously branded as wrangling data flows, ADF has brought the longstanding Power Query engine into its suite, allowing users to create Power Query executions within their pipelines. This may be particularly interesting for business analysts and lightweight developers looking to do basic data transformation in your Azure platform. All right, switching to Azure Databricks, we'll just do some quick hit updates here as well. SQL Analytics, which we've actually featured in other events, is a game changer in enhancing our effectiveness and ability to take advantage of our data lake investment. SQL Analytics provides a familiar SQL interface for users to interact with Delta objects stored in your enterprise data lake. This allows individuals with SQL knowledge to simply get to the data they desire, among other capabilities. Spark 3.0 was recently released, touting increased performance and a whole list of updates to various APIs and features being pushed out by the innovators at Apache. As part of this better together positioning, Databricks continues to be a key player alongside Synapse Analytics and features connectors to SQL Pool. Power BI connector, which is seeing fairly strong adoption, is now generally available, featuring enhanced performance and security capabilities, allowing Power BI users to take full advantage of organization data lakes via Databricks, behaving as a pseudo-semantic layer. And lastly, with data security being of high importance, we are particularly seeing our customers in the financial services and insurance industries look at deployment options with Databricks. Evolving from their VNet injection model, secure cluster connectivity further locks down Databricks clusters, limiting their need for connectivity outside of your network. All right, so at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Brendan to continue with some more Azure updates. So Brendan, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Emily. So yeah, we're going to switch gears a bit. Let's talk about data governance and Purview. So data governance and understanding of what sort of data you have available to you is certainly critical to unlocking its true value. But something that's always tough to do is meticulously define those objects that reside within your particular data store. So Purview, which was just released in general availability, will look to do that. So it works by capturing metadata from your organization's data objects without actually pulling any data into Purview itself. It's basically going to look and examine your organization's data store through a comprehensive scan. This scan can be imposed upon Microsoft offerings like ADLS, Azure DB, and Synapse, but new functionality has just been released to enable compatibility with S3 buckets of AWS, some SAP offerings in ECC and HANA, and Oracle databases as well. The outcome of the scanning data discovery portion is an extensive data catalog that's going to identify schemas and make it searchable in one cohesive UI. And having all of this general understanding of your data, you're going to have the meaning, its lineage, and its location within your data store of interest. And that's ultimately going to lead to greater collaboration and communication across your business teams. And as this data is classified and queryable, you're always going to be able to answer that classic, do we have this data question that seemingly always arises. And somewhere where we see Purview being, for very practical tools to help prepare organizations for current and future privacy regulation. We've helped our clients, to evaluate potential risk and exposure with privacy policies with respect to the CCPA, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, which was passed in 2018. For those that are unaware, the CCPA is very similar to that of GDPR. And its recent extension, the CPRA, are laws that California is taking in steps to protect its consumers' personally identifiable information, or PII, and subsequent regulations that businesses must adhere to for retention, deletion, and even more of businesses' collection of marketing or other collateral. And I really foresee these laws becoming more and more prevalent, particularly at the federal level. And I think Purview is going to be a great cataloging tool going forward because it has that ability to identify and classify PII that businesses are retaining. Let's get into a little bit of some actual data collection and analysis tools, particularly with IoT and event hubs and stream analytics. So I think as some organizations are looking to take their reporting to the next level, and as requirements sort of continue to shift towards more rapidly accessible insights, it's important to understand how Microsoft has begun to take steps within the Azure stack to prepare for the present and future of cloud and edge computing. So it begins with two hubs, one for Internet of Things and one for general event handling. And although both exist to be able to handle these large volumes of data in real time, there are small discrepancies really in the manner in which they do so, right? So the IoT hub, as you could probably imagine, is more specific than that of the event hub. And it specializes in that bidirectional communication, that's inherent with something that's with the Internet of Things. And this bidirectionality allows for communication from your IoT-enabled device to the IoT hub directly, and say in the form of file upload, and even communication from your IoT hub to your device in the form of a direct method, like turning on or turning off lights as an example. From a more general perspective, an event hub is just for receiving events or messages at a large scale without the IoT capabilities that an IoT hub has. So you can really think of, all IoT hubs are kind of event hubs, but not all event hubs are IoT hubs. And finally, once you have this data within your respective IoT or event hub, you're going to want to be able to retain that data. So you can actually pass the ingestion of that real-time streaming data to different Azure storage locations like a data lake or Azure Blob Store as well. And I alluded to stream analytics, so you can actually utilize that as well. So as its name suggests, stream analytics gives you the ability to perform these analytics on your data in real time through ingestion from event hubs, IoT hubs, or blob storage too. And with this, you can perform queries and real-time data analysis on your streaming data through a special analytics stream analytics querying language to really look at your data directly, or even apply machine learning on top of the streaming data to really give you that advanced analytic capability in real time. And further, the streaming data can really be passed to other Azure services like Synapse, Azure DB, or Databricks for even further analysis. But I do think it's sometimes difficult to visualize how something like an event hub or an IoT hub can fit alongside some traditional, warehousing architecture. So let's just take a quick look at what we sort of foresee as being practical in the real world. So say, for example, I'm working at a shipping facility and I'm dealing with temperature-sensitive goods, and I want to be able to not only make sure that temperature in my shipping facility is staying at, the perfect temperature, but also I'm keen on ensuring that, every single unit of good that I'm shipping out is tagged for the thousands upon thousands of pallets that I'm loading every day. With IoT Hub and Event Hub, tracking these scans and the monitoring the temperature, I know that I'm tracking all this data appropriately in real time. Upon collecting the streaming data from my hubs, I'm going to collect it and join it with different reference data to assign it, that attributional and dimensional attributes, so I can query it in real time to really get a solid understanding, of what I truly have and make sure I'm keeping up with, demand. I can also be alerted in real time and monitor my streaming data sort of coming through, by pushing data directly to Power BI or enabling some alerts from streaming analytics itself. And I think that's all well and good, right? But I want to be able to retain this real-time data and aggregate it so that I can report it to ensure that I'm hitting my monthly quotas, right? Making sure I'm shipping everything out, temperature's not being too high over any given month, right? So I can then pass that data to some sort of Azure data store, as I mentioned, like ADLS, Azure DB, or even Synapse, where it can be stored and ultimately reported on in something like Power BI or another visualization tool. So I think that any given moment, right, I have the ability to monitor, evaluate, and make critical decisions in real time and retrospectively through aggregated data that I've sort of received in real time. So pretty interesting, I think, pretty interesting to see how this sort of evolves in the future. And I did speak a bit about Azure ML and how you sort of have the ability to score, some of your real-time data and monitor it as such to detect maybe anomalies or something like that. But let's just take a step back as to what Azure ML is, and then speak about how we're sort of seeing it used at some of our clients. So Azure ML is a tool used to access a cloud-based environment where you can train and manage your ML models in one interface. So those on this webinar, probably heard about machine learning and what it generally is. Azure ML is just Microsoft's tool to enable all that within, an organization. Azure ML is really one of the only tools on the market that's going to allow you to analyze your data in real time and with batches of data, traditional ML modeling. And to actually get started with using Azure ML, you're going to use Azure ML Studio, which is the web portal that allows you to train, deploy, and manage your models. Within Studio, you're going to have the option to work with your models with a low or no code approach through the designer. It's like a traditional drag and drop interface, right, to clean, transform, and perform those advanced operations on your data. But you can also, use the traditional notebook manner using Python and R to build those models as well. And being a part of Microsoft's suite of Azure products, it's inherently quite easy to integrate your fleshed out models for use within your organization's wider ecosystem. So some traditional architectures that we see Azure ML being used with is pulling data directly from a data lake, or the newly integrated SQL pools with Synapse. You can use these data sets to feed your models and ultimately use that integration within Azure ML to write back to either one of those data storage offerings to view the results and the outcome. I think we're also seeing increased integration from Azure ML with Power BI directly. So it's going to be interesting too. So users are going to be able to, evaluate and view these models directly from Power BI and gather those results quickly. So obviously that's, a very high level view of what Azure ML is, but with a tool such as this, results and implementation are sometimes hard to interpret on surface. So, there are certain principles I called ML ops, where Thorogood is really seeing a lot of movement and has experience in implementing. So I'm just going to touch on that briefly next. So in essence, ML ops is DevOps, but with an analytics and machine learning spin on it. And it's going to use the agility and rapid development practices to enable the advanced machine learning model production. So what are the stages of a typical ML ops lifecycle? It's going to begin with initial business and data understanding, coupled with exploratory data analysis. And it's really important to understand that the data that you have available to you before even beginning to develop any sort of models, right? You need to understand the source of the data, the granularity, and who are the SMEs that can really help you truly understand what's there. And this can really only be done by sifting through data that's available to you and truly, getting that understanding. And from a pure data perspective and from a business understanding perspective, you really want to have that strong understanding of both before you're comfortable with building out any sort of model. And I think one of the pitfalls that we've seen with some of our clients is that sometimes, the data scientists are siloed from the business and miss that importance of some of the metrics that maybe are critical to business success. So there needs to be an understanding technically and practically, because at the end of the day, the models are supposed to support your businesses to become more data and analytically driven and not necessarily lead to more ambiguity. So upon building, that solid understanding of the data, it's important to start transforming, cleaning, and preparing data for ingestion. And through our work with our clients, we've actually found that engineering data outside of Azure ML and using a tool that may be better equipped for it, like Databricks or Synapse, is going to allow for better performance for when the model is ultimately productionized. So this stage in the MLOps lifecycle is the point in which Azure ML is really utilized fully with the development and creation of the advanced models. But before productionizing the model, it is again, an exercise in constantly iterating between engineering and tuning the model so it can get to a state where your outputs are satisfactory. And when those models are finally satisfactory, and you're ready to move past the stage of quick model development, you can move to the point in the MLOps lifecycle that's sort of going to truly deliver continuous value to your organization. And that's sort of done by instilling those solid engineering and development practices. And it's going to be much easier to orchestrate the delivery from your of your model output from raw data to tuned model output by having those strong foundations. However, as it is for all models, it's not necessarily going to remain always perfect. There could always be some sort of disruptor that comes in and can really drastically change the nature of your data. So something like COVID, for example. So it's important to not only report on your model outputs, but monitor them so they don't become unreliable. So obviously there's a one final feedback loop here that exists within the final stage. By monitoring your models, you can determine if there is some fault with the logic, modify it accordingly, and ultimately redeploy. This is all sort of done, in the DevOps framework, right? The agility and the continuous integration and deployment practices. That again, DevOps really preaches. So there are, multiple stages within the life cycle of an MLOps project that are inherently iterative, and it really requires a lot of attention from engineers, scientists, and business users alike. So again, being able to work alongside all these different business units is therefore critical to really ensure your model is accurate to take your organization to become not necessarily data-driven, but analytics driven. So that was kind of, brief update on some ML ops practices that Thorogood has sort of seen. But, to close out here, just some additional, Azure updates that came out of Microsoft's biannual Ignite conference a couple weeks ago. So a couple interesting things I want to call out here. First being Azure Arc. So as companies begin expanding their environments to a hybrid cloud or multi-cloud rather than just one single cloud platform, there are obviously a lot of challenges with that, right? and governing that infrastructure across platforms. So with Azure Arc, your VMs, your Kubernetes clusters and databases, regardless of where they lived, can now be managed if they were deployed and running in Azure, which obviously is going to help organizations whose strategies revolve around hybrid, being on-prem cloud combination, or multi-cloud models through something like Microsoft and AWS, Microsoft and GCP, et cetera. So speak on another infrastructure offering that Microsoft has really bolstered out. I just want to briefly talk about Azure Migrate and new capabilities that are coming. So Azure Migrate supplies you with a lot of different tools to help you assess and ultimately help you migrate your servers and your databases, your VM infrastructure, again, and your data from on-prem to the cloud. Obviously, there are a ton of considerations to be taken into account when doing this sort of cloud migration, which Thorogood has helped with in the past. But having a tool to assist you for this is obviously going to help as well. Particularly with the pandemic, a lot of organizations are really accelerating their transformation to the cloud. So I think this is definitely something to keep an eye on as well. I think lastly, what a lot of people may be familiar with is Microsoft Power Platform, which has Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents, which really allow you to report, construct business solutions, and streamline automation through the connection within the platform itself and to the wider Microsoft offerings in Office 365 or Azure to really create comprehensive business tools. And again, on that point of digital transformation, there's really been increased adoption and consumption of these various tools, and Microsoft is continuously adding them, adding enhancements to them to really improve them. So there's pretty much a continuous stream of updates across them. One being, Process Advisor, which is a new feature in Purview within Power Automate that's really going to allow you to discover and record your business's manual processes to understand and further optimize, which actions are taking the longest as well. And from a licensing perspective as well, actually on April 2nd, Power BI Premium per user licensing will be made available. In the past, Power BI Premium subscription could really only be paid for at the organizational level. So it's interesting how that shift has sort of have come to be more user centric rather than necessarily an organization. So something to keep in mind for the future as well as you look to monitor your usage. So I think to kind of close here with extensive, Thorogood really has a lot of experience with the suite of Azure product offerings and beyond. And I think Thorogood is really well placed to help you and your organizations, and your organization for Azure related products and applications. And I think within the past few months, we've really seen a lot and worked with some clients on a lot of interesting things. Some, migrating some on-prem data warehouses to Synapse, some exploratory data analysis and data science applications, in production and industrialization of ML ops tools using, a whole slew of different tools for different clients. And lastly, devising organizational and governance strategies as well, revolving around privacy compliance and even other sort of organizational strategies at a much wider level too. So if these topics or anything related to them are interesting to you, please feel free to reach out to Emily or myself. We do also have a couple of events coming up. If you wanted to learn more about Synapse, we actually have a webinar coming up in a couple of days, so feel free to tune into that. And if you want to get your hands on to more of Microsoft's product offerings, we also offer some virtual workshops in the UK, the US, Brazil, and I believe even in Singapore, we'll have some eventually on our calendar as well. So please feel free to reach out if you're interested in learning more about those. Yeah, that's really all Emily and I had for today. So really appreciate all your guys' time. Sorry we ran a bit over, but appreciate the time, and please reach out if there are any other additional questions. Thank you.